طيب. Today, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to have a brief glimpse, if you will, in the life of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, rahimahullah ta'ala. Before we talk about his life, I'm just going to mention a hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. This hadith was reported on Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala an, and the Nabiya sallallahu alayhi wa sallam qala, وَدَدْتُ أَنِّي لَقِيتُ إِخْوَانِي. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, he said in his hadith, he said, I'd love to meet my brothers. My brothers. And Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam, in the first part of this hadith, this is actually talking about, this is a hadith that was narrated at the grave, when the Muslims give salam on the deceased. But this part of the hadith, he told them, وَدَدْتُ أَنِّي لَقِيتُ إِخْوَانِي. I would love that I would meet my brothers. فَقَالَ أَصْحَابُهُ. So his companions were around him when he said this. Now mind you, these are people who lived with the Prophet ﷺ, meaning they lived in the same time period, right? So he said, they said, أَوَلَيْسَ نَحْنُ إِخْوَانُكَ. He said, aren't we your brothers? Aren't we your brothers? This is what the companions, they said to the Prophet ﷺ, aren't we your brothers? And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Antum ashabi. You all are my companions. وَلَكِنْ إِخْوَانِي الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِي وَلَمْ يَرَوْنِي. He said, you are my companions. He said, my brothers are the ones that believed in me, but they've never seen me. They believed in me and never saw me. We think about this hadith, and then we couple that with what we're about to talk about today, inshallah ta'ala, the life of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, a small glimpse, a small piece. If you want a more detailed one, there was one from Sheikh Salih Ali Sheikh, but that's not really detailed. But if you really want more, you can find in Sir A'lam an-Nubala. In Sir A'lam an-Nubala. طيب. So, one of the things we have to understand is the time periods. Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was born in the year 164 Hijri. So that would be the equivalent of almost the year 700, if you will, around that time. So right now we're in what? 2024. That would have been in the year 700 and some change. Or a little after. That's the 8th century or the 9th century. How do you think people traveled during those time periods? How do you think they traveled? Walked. A lot of them walked. Right? How else did they travel? They had planes? Well, the animals was used to carry their goods. So they had the animals to carry their luggage, their property, whatever they need, and then they would walk in some cases, in most cases. So I want y'all to understand when we talk about, because there's a couple things here I want to point out. When we speak about the life of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal and the ulama during that time, they would travel for hadith. They would travel. They didn't have Google. They didn't have YouTube. They didn't have the internet. They heard that such and such lives in this town, and he has one hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. They would walk for a month and a half, sometimes 2 months, to get one hadith. Not Sahih Bukhari, not Sahih Muslim, not all of them, right? One hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, because that's what Islam meant to them. Nowadays, when a person speaks about holding on to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, some people may say Islam modernized. Islam is not like that anymore. But there's only one Quran, and there's only one sunnah, and there's only one understanding of the pious predecessors. And from those three things Islam is adaptable to every time and every place. However, it doesn't take away from the core premise is that we extract our deen from the Quran and from the Sunnah. So I want everyone to think about how people would travel a month, 2 months. Now, what's the longest anyone ever walked here? Because we got to put things in perspective. What's the longest you ever walked? Huh? 40 minutes. MashaAllah. What's the longest you ever walked in one time? 4 hours. Good. How'd you feel after walking 4 hours? Was your body hurting? Was in pain? You had to sit down for a little while? Anybody else? Anybody top 4 hours? When the last time you did that?
Very young person.
Very young.
Teenager.
I done a lot of walking in Mecca.
You walked 4 hours worth?
I was off top of the mountain, of the hill, all the way down to the bottom.
Right.
In the heat.
In the heat. So think about this. These scholars of the past, they walked a month for one hadith. How many of us right now will walk a month to learn something about Islam that you didn't know? Not many. And the reason for that, the reason why we wouldn't do that is because we haven't been geared, it hasn't been made that important to us. There used to be a time where some people felt that sense of urgency to want to learn their religion. So today, inshallah ta'ala, this is a small glimpse into the life of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And Imam Ahmad, he was born in the year 164 Hijri. 164 Hijri, and he died in the year 241 Hijri. The Imam of Ahlul Sunnah, he died when he was 77 years of age. He was 77 years old. He was known to be from the Ummah Sunnah, from the Imams of Ahlul Sunnah. And so some of the things we're going to learn about, they say Al-Imam Ahmad ajma'u nas ala annahu Imam al-Huda. That the people, all of them agreed that he was an Imam of guidance. Now here's the thing. When we hear about scholars, right, sometimes you might find people praising certain sheikhs. They say, you got to go benefit from this sheikh or benefit from that sheikh, right? But then you got to look at the one that's telling you that. The one that's telling you that, he has to A, be from the people that recognize knowledge when he sees it, or B, he has to be from the people that are above that person saying this person you could benefit from because they have knowledge. Did that make sense? Our religion is perfect in that when it comes to taking knowledge from people, etc., the rules are in place for a reason. For example, you, and no disrespect to you, any of you, any brother here, right? You haven't studied Islam. You don't know Arabic. You haven't studied hadith. You haven't studied fiqh. You haven't studied usul. You haven't studied much of anything. Yet, you may be saying, hey, you must take your deen from this sheikh. The question is, who are you? Man anta. Anta majhul. You're unknown. Who are you? And when we say unknown, unknown in the circles of what? The circles of knowledge. You're unknown in the circles of knowledge. So when we talk about Imam Ahmad, it's that the people have agreed. The people during that time agreed that he was the Imam of guidance. Ratsa immata Ahlus Sunnah wa Jama'ah. He was the leader of Ahlus Sunnah wa Jama'ah during his time period. فكان الناس في ذلك الزمن يمتحنون بمحنة الإمام أحمد. During that time, people were tested by Imam Ahmad. Right? Not today you test a person's sunnah based on one sheikh that you know here a lot. During that time, the people were tested. What do you feel about Imam Ahmad? They saw we don't like him, then a person would say this person here is not from Ahlul Sunnah. The people that loved Imam Ahmad, it was known that they were people from Ahlul Sunnah. This is important, right? فكان إمام أحمد رحمه الله تعالى ماذا كان شابا وهو يرى عليه آثار النسك. They say that when he was a young person, they would see signs of nusuk. Nusuk here means signs of worship. And pay attention, brothers and sisters. If you have children and you see from your children signs of obedience to Allah, you have to nurture that. Your child, your son, your daughter, they could be from the next scholars of Islam. You have to nurture that. So they said they saw signs of nusuk, worship, and obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he was a young person. Now, Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said about himself, مَا تَزَوَّجْتُ إِلَّا بَعْدَ أَرْبَعِينَ. He said about himself, I didn't get married until after 40 years of age. Until he was what? 40 years of age. Why is that? Why did Imam Ahmad wait so long to get married? Why do you think? Because he was busy في الرحلة في طلب العلم. He was busy traveling to seek knowledge. He was busy traveling to seek knowledge. I heard a brother tell me about a month ago. He said, well, Sheikh, you know, we don't really got to travel to go study now. We can just, alhamdulillah, benefit from everybody here. I said, yeah, you could benefit from everybody here, but traveling to study is going to take you to a different level. See, one of the benefits of traveling to go study Islam is that you get to drink from the same fountains that the one that's teaching you from, the ones that's teaching you the same fountains that they drink from. That's what you want to do. For example, you sit with Sheikh Saeed, suck all his knowledge up, and then go sit with the ulama. Whatever he benefited you with, you take and use those tools, and you get more from the scholars. That's how it works. That's what seeking knowledge is about. So it says, قال أصحابه لأنه كان مشغولا برحلته قبل ذلك رحل إلى مكة. So now we're going to go through some stories that happened during the time of Imam Ahmad. So one of his companions, they said that he was busy, مشغولا برحلة. He was always busy traveling to seek knowledge. So one year, رحل إلى مكة ومنها إلى صنعاء. He had planned to go from Mecca to Sana'a. Where's Sana'a? Now, mind you, I didn't mention this. Imam Ahmad was from Iraq. Imam Ahmad was from where? Iraq. He was going to travel from Iraq to Mecca. Mashiyan. Mashiyan. Walking. I read somewhere it might take a month. How many of us could walk somewhere for a whole month? So it says, رحل إلى مكة ومنها إلى صنعاء وله في ذلك قصة وهو أنه ذهب مع يحيى ibn Ma'in. So he went from Mecca to Sana'a. Sana'a is in Yemen. He was with his companion Yahya ibn Ma'in. Yahya ibn Ma'in was from the ulama of hadith. Him and Imam Ahmad, they both were scholars of hadith. And it said that Yahya ibn Ma'in sahibahu ila al-Hajj. So Yahya ibn Ma'in, he was going to Mecca to make Hajj. So they walked to Mecca to make Hajj, him and Yahya ibn Ma'in. Qala Yahya. Yahya ibn Ma'in, he says, Qala li Yahya. He said to Yahya ibn Ma'in, he said, فرقت من الحج فإني سأذهب إلى اليمن للقاء عالم اليمن. He said, as soon as we finish making Hajj, I'm going to go to, he didn't say we, he said, I'm going to go to Yemen so I can sit with the scholar of Yemen. We got all we had here. We're going to go to Yemen and sit with the scholar of Yemen. Muhaddithan. He was a muhaddith. His name is Abdul Razak ibn Hammam as-San'ani. Abdul Razak as-San'ani. He's a famous scholar. In fact, we have one of his books in here. What's his book called? A Musannif. A Musannif from Abdul Razak as-San'ani. A Musannif. It's about 50 volumes. And in this book called Al-Musannif, you find the fiqh of the Sahaba. What is that? What do you mean? Let's say, for example, you read a book of hadith. You read through Bukhari, you read through Sunan Abi Dawud, and you hear a certain ahadith, and you don't necessarily know how those ahadith are implemented. So then you go through books like the Musannif. There are two of them, Musannifain. One is Abdul Razak al-San'ani, and the other one is Abdul Razak man al-Nasid. Astaghfirullah. Shuf, bu'd an al-ilm ya Shaykh. We'll get the name. I know it's the Musannifain. One Abdul Razak al-San'ani, and I forget Abdul Razak. They're both was Abdul Razaks. One of them is Abdul Razak al-San'ani, and I forget. Later, inshallah, we'll get the name for the other one. At any event, he was going to go sit with this Sheikh, Abdul Razak al-San'ani. Huh? What is it? La 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 la. It's just smooth. You got the name, Sheikh? Astaghfirullah. This is bad. Yeah, Sheikh. It's just kitab. Right. So, Abdul Razak al-San'ani, rahimahullah ta'ala, he died in the year 210 بعد هجري. فلما وصل إلى مكة كان عبد الرزاق في الحج تلك السنة. Now pay attention. When Imam Ahmad and Yahya bin Ma'in, when they went to Mecca to make Hajj, guess who was there when they went to Mecca to make Hajj? A Sheikh Abdul Razak al-San'ani. Mind you, they were headed to Yemen to go sit with him. But by the time they walked and got to Mecca, and they found him there at the Kaaba making Hajj. فَلَقِيَهُ يَحْيَى وَعَرَفَهُ وَلَقِيَهُ وَهُوَ يَطُوفُ فَعَرَفَهُ وَسَلَّمَ عَلَيْهِ. So Yahya bin Ma'in, he saw Sheikh Abdul Razak al-San'ani, and he gave him the salams, and he walked with him while he was making tawaf, and they knew each other. فَقَالَ يَحْيَى لِعَبْدُ الرَّزَاقِ. Yahya bin Ma'in, he said to Abdul Razak al-San'ani, he said, وَكَانَ يَعْرِفُهُ هَذَا Ahmad bin Hanbal. He was introducing him to Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So Abdul Razak, فَصُرَّ بِهِ Abdul Razak فَقَالَ قَدْ بَلَغَنَا عَنْهُ أَنَّهُ صَاحِبُ الْخَيْرِ. So Abdul Razak, he said, man, we heard about him. It reached us nothing but good about him, that he's a companion of good. فَلَمَّا صَلَّيَ رَكْعَتَيْ طَوَافٍ. Now mind you, all of this was while they were making tawaf. Now this is something to let people know, if you did not make Hajj or Umrah, that it is permissible to talk when you're making tawaf, even though it's like the salat. The difference is you can speak, you can talk while you're making tawaf. So we introduced them, they introduced each other while they're making tawaf around the Kaaba. After that, they prayed their 2 raka'ats, because once you finish making your seven tawaf around the Kaaba, you have to pray 2 raka'ats behind. There's something called the Maqam Ibrahim. The Maqam Ibrahim, it's a basin, and inside of it is the footprints of the Prophet Ibrahim. You have to make 2 raka'ats behind that. So they said, فَلَمَّا صَلِيَ رَكْعَتَيْ طَوَافٍ. Once they finished praying the 2 raka'at after making tawaf, قَالَ يَحْيَى لِإِمَامِ Ahmad. Yahya said to Imam Ahmad, he says, Ya Ahmad, قَدْ ذَهَبَتْ عَنَّا مُؤْنَةُ السَّفَرِ إِلَى صَنْعَى. So Yahya bin Ma'in, he said, Ahmad, all of the things that we needed to go travel, we lost it. So we don't even have the provisions to make it to Yemen. We don't have the provisions to make it in Yemen. فهذا عبد الرزاق فهل ما بنا نلازمه حتى نأخذ عنه حديث. We don't have the provisions to make it to Yemen. Abdul Razak is right there. Why can't we just benefit from him right here instead of going to Yemen? That would make sense, right? Why can't we benefit from him now, here, before we go to Yemen? طيب. فقال أحمد ليحيى بن معين قد مضت نيتي ولن نخالفها فسأرحل إلى صنعاء. He said, I made my intentions firm. My intention was to travel to Yemen, so he didn't want to take hadith from him there. He wanted to wait till he got to Yemen and take the hadith from him there. So think about that. From Mecca to Yemen, how long of a walk you think that was? Another couple weeks maybe. Maybe more. Why? Because he didn't want to take hadith from him. Think about that. All of this is him loving the deen of Islam and wanting to follow his intention to go to Yemen. Because maybe, and somebody might ask, well, why wouldn't he take hadith from the sheikh in Mecca? Why wouldn't he do that? Because maybe, and Allah knows best, maybe because it wasn't the place for that. They went to Mecca for Hajj, not to take hadith. He said once they finish Hajj, then they're going to go to the Yemen and sit in Yemen and benefit from hadith from Abdul Razak as-San'ani, rahimahullah ta'ala. A Sheikh Salih Ali Sheikh, may Allah preserve him, he said, هذا من أثر رغبة في التنسك والسعي في طلب العلم. That is an indicator of his desire to want to learn the deen and study the deen. How many of us would make a travel like that to get one hadith of the Prophet ﷺ? The question is, if we do not have that desire to travel to take one hadith, then that means there's a problem in our religion. There's a problem with our iman. Why is that? Because obviously it's something that's serious, but we don't understand the seriousness of it. What would make a man travel a month by foot to get a hadith? Huh? Yeah, loving the sunnah. We say we love the sunnah, but what do we want to do for it? How many of us, not only did most of us probably wouldn't travel by foot, how many of us even read through Sahih Bukhari, cover to cover? Sahih Muslim, cover to cover. Sunan Abi Dawood, etc. We live in a time period where many of us, we've gotten really lazy. The next thing we mentioned about Imam Ahmad. Imam Ahmad, and right now we're going to talk about his worship. What type of worship did he have? Abdul Razak ibn Abi Shayba, Mumtaz. So the Musannifain, Abdul Razak as-San'ani, Abdul Razak ibn Abi Shayba. Those are the Musannifain. Both of those books speak about the fiqh of the Sahaba. You said Ibn Abi Dunya. You said Ibn Abi Shayba? You did? Astaghfirullah. I thought you said Ibn Abi Dunya. Malish. طيب. ولهذا, the next thing, أن الإمام لقى مرة أحد أصحاب الحديث. So now, Imam Ahmad, mind you, he's a scholar of hadith. He's a scholar of aqidah. He's a scholar of fiqh, etc. So, he met another scholar of hadith. Now, this is how it used to be when we were in school. Myself and Abu Sajid, when we were in school, when brothers came to visit us in Mecca, our sittings, we wouldn't talk about nothing except it had to do with knowledge. So if you came in our presence, you automatically knew we were going to talk about issues of the deen and what do you think about this issue, what dalil, what do you say about this and that. If that wasn't the type time you was on, you would get away from us. That's just the vibe we was on, right? So Imam Ahmad right now, and Imam Ahmad right now is meeting another scholar of hadith. When he met him, وَهُوَ Abdul Samit ibn Sulaiman. The scholar of hadith, his name was Abdul Samit ibn Sulaiman. فَلَمَّا أَضَافَهُ فِي بَيْتِهِ. He stayed in the house of Imam Ahmad. He stayed in the house of Imam Ahmad. فَحَانَ مَوْعِدَ النَّوْمِ. And the time for sleep. It was time to go to bed. So Imam Ahmad, he filled up water and put it by his door. Mind you, this is what? In the year 700s, 800s. He filled up a bucket of water, a bowl of water, and put it by his door. Why did he do that? He says, لِيَتَوَضَّ مِنْهُ أَوْ لِيَسْتَعْمَلَهُ وَنَامْ. So that he can either make wudu, if he needed to make wudu, or use the water for whatever else he needed it for. فَلَمَّا أَتَى الصَّبَاحِ. So when the morning came, Imam Ahmad looked and he saw that the water wasn't touched. He saw that the water wasn't touched. So Imam Ahmad asked him, why didn't you touch the water? He says, قال لم استعمل الماء. He said, I didn't use the water. So Imam Ahmad was puzzled and amazed. Pay attention. He said, صاحب الحديث وليس له ورد في الليل. He said, you're a companion of hadith and you don't get up and pray at night? You don't stand in the night and pray? يعني إلى الصباح ولم يقوم الليل. You don't stand at night and pray at all? وَلَمْ تَتَعَبِّدْ وَلَمْ تُصَلِّ رَكْعَتَيْنِ. He said, you don't stand at night, you don't worship Allah at all at night, and you're a companion of hadith? This is Imam Ahmad saying this about another scholar of hadith. And I'm going to switch gears because the students of knowledge are not ulama. But if you're around a student of knowledge and certain issues you talk about and they don't know them, you're like, what? You studying deen and you don't cover this? You don't know this? So imagine on a higher level, we're talking about ulama, imams. And he's looking at him and said, wait a minute, you stayed in my house all night, you're a scholar of hadith, and you didn't pray at all? No acts, no signs of worship? So what did the man say to him? He's a person of sunnah. He says, قَالَ إِنِّي مُسَافِرٌ. He said, I'm a traveler. What's the benefit of him saying he's a traveler? Huh? It's a what? It's an excuse. Why? Because when you're traveling, it's not necessarily reported that you pray your sunnah while you're traveling. So the scholar hadith said, "Inni musafir." He said, I'm a traveler. I'm good. Imam Ahmad said, "Qala, walau kunta musafiran." يعني أين الوتر؟ أين بعض الصلاة? He said, Imam Ahmad said, even if you are a traveler, you didn't even pray witr. You don't have nothing with you, no salat, not even some of the salat. Why do you think Imam Ahmad reacted that way? Anybody?
Because he had certain expectations of him?
Mumtaz. Because he had expectations. Think about it. You're Imam Ahlul Sunnah. During that time, when the ulama would teach, narrate a hadith, it would be, in one of the classes, it was 5,000 people sitting in a lecture of Imam Ahmad. 5,000. 5,000. These are the gatherings that they would have for hadith, people sitting and wanting to learn. And he said to this man, you're a companion of hadith, sahib hadith, but you didn't get up and pray. And so another benefit from this is that when you seek knowledge, be it hadith, fiqh, usul, whatever, the knowledge that you learn, it has to be accompanied with worship. Otherwise, you can become maghrur. You can look at yourself and think you're better than you are. You can look at yourself and have better thoughts of yourself than you need to. You can look at yourself and believe you got a station with Allah that you weren't given. طيب. وهذا لا شك, as a sheikh he says, a sheikh Saleh Ali Sheikh, he says, لا بد من قصر النفس. So one of the benefits here, when a person is seeking knowledge and you're on a path of seeking knowledge, you must accompany talab al-ilm, seeking knowledge, with worship. You have to. They go hand in hand. Otherwise, our nafs and our desires will take over. He says, وَالنَّفْسُ إِن تَوَعَتْهَا أَطَاعَتْكَ. If we take our desires and we make our desires do what we want them to do, then our desires will follow. Pay attention to that. That's a deep statement. Everybody has desires. But if we can control them, then our desires will be controlled to do that which is pleasing to Allah. Does that make sense? Huh? But guess what? If we don't control them, then like Allah says, an-nafs amara bis-su. If we don't control our desires, then our desires will control us and command us to do disobedience. Does that make sense? Everyone can think about themselves at times where their mom was right and all they wanted to do was good. And then everyone can think about times where they let their nafs take over and all they did was evil. This is anybody. And this goes back to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, "Man yatasabbaru yusabbiruhu Allah." Whoever works to become patient, then Allah will make him patient. Whoever works to learn, then Allah will educate him. Whoever wants to do good, then Allah will allow him to do good. And whoever wants to stay away from evil, then Allah will allow him to stay away from evil. Remember, these are things that we all have. We have to want these things. None of us is going to memorize the book of Allah if we don't want to. None of us are going to learn the deen of al-Islam if we don't want to. None of us are going to learn the Arabic language if we don't want to. None of us are going to tighten up in our deen if we don't want to. Nobody accidentally becomes, they say, a rajul multazim. Nobody's going to be a person of sunnah and stand up obedience to Allah if that's not what you want to do. It's not going to happen by accident. Brothers, sisters, these are things that we have to work at. These are things that we have to put the effort in to do. It's not going to be by accident. You're not going to keep getting high, doing what you do, and think that, okay, inshallah, I'm going to change. It don't work like that. You don't want to. If you have an issue, we get up and we ask Allah, ya'tarif, confess. You know how some faiths, they go to the priest and confess their sins? We don't do that. We confess to Allah. Get up in the last third of the night, call on your Lord, ya'tarif bidhanubik. Tell Allah, oh Allah, these are the sins that I've committed. You know these are the sins that I committed. This is what I want to do. I want to be a better worshiper of you. I want to learn your religion. I want to do these things. Get up in the last third of the night. This is how these things happen. You got to want to do that. Huh? You got to want to do it. If somebody was fighting, let's say it was a fight on. The fight don't come on 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. You usually go to bed at 8. Everybody going to stay up and want to watch the fight. They're going to get pay-per-view. I don't need pay-per-view. What's the other genre? Pay-per-view still? They call it pay-per-view? Everybody getting pay-per-view and all types of stuff because they want to stay up and watch the fight. Fight don't come on maybe 1, 2 o'clock, for example. People want to stay up and watch it. Why? Because that's something you what? You want to do. You want to do. If it's a movie, you want to stay up all night to watch it. Whatever the case may be, if something you want to do it, you're going to do it. How many people are going to say, I really don't want to learn deen? No one's going to say, I really don't, because that's not a good thing to say. You say that out your mouth, people are going to look at you crazy. But the reality of it is, we don't want to learn deen. That's the facts. And if you don't want to learn deen, and you feel like you want to learn deen, then you tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, I feel like I don't want to learn the deen. Oh Allah, give me the strength to learn your religion. Put the love of learning your religion in my heart. طيب. The next one. قال أبو داود السليمان الأشعث صاحب السنة. These are other scholars of Sunnah. He said, he's from the Tilmidha Imam Ahmad, from the students of Imam Ahmad. وقد روى عنه مسائل كثيرة. He narrated on Imam Ahmad many issues. فيما وصف الإمام. And he said, ما رأيت مثل أحمد بن حنبل لم يكن يخوض في شيء مما يخوض فيه الناس من أمر الدنيا فإذا ذكر العلم تكلم. Now pay attention to this. He said, I did not see Imam Ahmad. This is one of his students, because you know students watch their teachers, right? A student will watch his teacher. He said, I didn't see Imam Ahmad entering into anything, any speech that had to do with the normal speech of the people. He would be quiet. He said, however, if anyone started talking about knowledge of the deen, that's when he would speak. That's when he would speak. Another thing about Imam Ahmad, and we mentioned this hadith, or mentioned the ayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah says, La khayra fi kathira min najawahum. Allah says, when people get together and talk, and we know this, how many times we get together and talk to people, and it's about nonsense. You know, in Mecca, we had a saying, Abu Sajid and myself, we had a saying, we used to call certain people time wasters. Here comes a time waster. Let's get away from him. Why would we consider certain people to be time wasters? Why? Because during that time, our day was scheduled, planned out to a T. And we knew that if we would stop and spend time talking to certain people, that would mess your whole day up because your schedule would be off. Right? Am I right? These people, they will mess your whole, and then your whole day be messed up. Another time waster, no offense, sisters, it would be going to weddings. It was a time waster. But I got to explain why. See, in Saudi Arabia, time wasters, you remember those? Time wasters, the weddings, you'll go to a wedding, and it's not normal. Like, you know, you might think between Maghrib and Isha. No. Saudi Arabia, that joint is from Maghrib to Fajr. Abu said, you're like, man, I got a wedding. I said, damn, I ain't going. I'm trying to hide, man. Because if you get stuck going to a wedding, you got to stay up all night. And if you stay all the way up to Fajr, it'll mess up your next day of study. There's no studying the next day. You just lost a whole day. طيب. So he says, وَلَا خَيْرَ فِي كَثِيرٍ مِّن نَجْوَاهُمْ إِلَّا مَنْ أَمَرَ بِصَدَقَةٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says there's no good in many of the gatherings that people had unless they are commanded to do good, or they're giving charity, they're commanded to do good, or they're rectifying affairs between people. If you're not doing those three things and you're talking about people, 9 times out of 10, it ain't good. It ain't good. So it says, Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, إِذَا تَكَلَّمَ رَبَّمَا أَجْتَمِعُ مَا إِخْوَانِهِ. They said if he would speak with his brothers, or with his companions, or with his students, or with the people. تَكَلَّمُوا فِي أَنْوَاءٍ مِنَ الْكَلَامِ لكن هو لا يتكلم إذا كان كلامه في الخير. إذن كان كلامه في الخير. He wouldn't speak in his speech that he would talk to the people about, it would be good. فإذا ذكر العلم تكلم. And if knowledge was mentioned, that's when he would speak. If knowledge was mentioned, that's when he would speak. Somebody today might say, man, that seems excessive. Somebody might say, man, Scott, man, that was back in the day. I was back in the day, the old times. Well, guess what? The scholars of Islam will tell us, look at the people that died because their actions are over. What they've done is done. As for us that's still living, we can still make mistakes. As for us that's still living, we can make a lot of mistakes and may not die or be known to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For those that think that, you know, oh, this is too much, or, you know, I mean, it's extra, or why would he be like that, etc. Think about this. Does everyone think getting into Jannah is going to be easy? The only reason why we think it's extra is because our taqwa is weak. Anyone that looks at this and say, oh man, the sheikh is doing too much, you don't got to be all like that, you can talk about, it's because our iman is not at that level. We love other things. We don't love the deen like that. Right? We don't love it like that. We love the deen, but not like that, not to that extent. And that's the problem. Our fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not like that. It's not like that. It's not. Lil asif. If it was like that, we would move differently. See, if you want to know a person, watch how they move. They can tell you everything you know about a person. My father used to tell me, if you want to know about a person, sit back and let them talk. You're going to learn everything you need to know without talking. Just let them talk. The more a person talks, the more you learn. The more a person talks to you, the more you learn. You don't have to say anything. If you don't hear a person talking about how they're going to get closer to Allah, what deen, and try to better themselves, then that's not what they're into. A person speaks about what they're into. Does that make sense? Right. So the next one, Maw'udi min ashab Ahmad, another companion, one of his students, Maw'udi min ashab Ahmad min talamidatihi alladhina naqalu anhu masail kathira. Another one of his students who narrated a lot of issues from his fiqh, Imam Ahmad. He said, قال للإمام أحمد يا أبا عبد الله ما أكثر داعي لك. His companion, one of his students, he said to Imam Ahmad, he said, oh, Abu Abdullah, a lot of people make dua for you. A lot of people make dua for you. So Imam Ahmad, he said, قال أخاف أن يكون استدراجا. He said, I fear, pay attention. And this is where we're lacking. He said, I fear that this is istidrajan. Now, what is istidraj? Anybody ever heard this before? This term istidraj? Huh? Allah mentions it in the Quran. سَنَسْتَدْرِجُهُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Right? What does that mean? وَأُمْلِي لَهُمْ إِنَّ كَيْدِي مَتِينٌ. What does that mean? Istidraj. Huh? The what? I'm sorry? Letting you hang yourself. Okay, mumkin. Possible. What else? Same thing. Setting you up. That's what kind of like setting you up. So basically what it means is, istidraj means you become fooled. So the opposite of istidraj, daraja, right? Daraja is going up, istidraj is going down, right? So basically what it means is, he fears that he's going to become big of himself. In other words, earning the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by not fearing him and being mindful of him. How many times we praise people? Pray, maybe it's recitation, mashallah, tabarakallah, and the brother, yeah, alhamdulillah. Maybe deep down inside, he like, yeah, my John really is like that. But he don't say that out loud. He got it hidden in his heart, right? That's from istidraj. It's possible that Allah could want him to be that way internally, to accept all the praise and fake humility, whatever, because no one knows. We don't know what's in a person's chest. La nahkum fi qulub an-nas. We can't judge what's in our hearts and the breasts of mankind. So to us, mashallah, the brothers, humble, mashallah, that's all we know. We don't know what's inside. Allah knows what's inside. We could fool everybody, but Allah could be using that to send that person to the hellfire. You understand? Did that make sense? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can use the praise of the people for you to harm you, but you don't know. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, سَنَسْتَدْرِجُهُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. We're setting them up. We're putting them in a bad space that he don't even know. حَيْثُ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. That person has no idea. He has no idea. So to us, you might look like, mashallah, this brother, mashallah, sister is pious. Everyone speaks good of him. But Allah knows the situation better than us. So Imam Ahmad was aware of this. He was aware of it. So he said every time somebody praised him, he feared that it was istidraj. Maybe this is Allah getting ready to line him up, getting ready to put him in a situation where he might be going to the hellfire. Getting ready to put Imam Ahmad in a bad space with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what he was up. That's what he was fearful of. The thing about us, brothers and sisters in Islam, when people celebrate you and they praise you, some of the Salaf will say that, basically you're breaking a person's back. You're praising a person to his face. Sometimes that praise might make that person feel like he's somebody special. So somebody might say, well, brother, nowadays we need people to feel special. Right? Because everyone's, right now this whole thing about, a person's emotions is important. People need to feel special. No. Yes, you should feel special by getting close to Allah. You should feel special knowing that you yearn Allah's goodness and you fear his punishment. You want the good from Allah, but you fear his punishment. A lot of times people become amazed with themselves, especially people who follow the Quran. It's dangerous. You become a memorizer of the book of Allah, people praise you for that. People praise you for that. You could be a scholar of hadith or a scholar of sunnah, people praise you for that. Right? These are all things that could jam a person up if they're not sincere. And you think about this, the malaika. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the malaika, يَخَافُونَ رَبَّهُم مِّن فَوْقِهِمْ وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. The malaika, they fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they do everything that they're commanded. They do every single thing that they're commanded. And if a person were to test themselves, right? Look at ourselves individually. Where's the fear of Allah in our hearts? فَرَضْنَا فِي الْوَاجِبَاتِ. If we don't even do all of the things that Allah commanded us to do properly, why is that? Because our fear is not where it needs to be. Think about this. Every Muslim you look to and you talk to, all of them hope for something. Oh yeah, inshallah. If you talk to them, everyone says, I hope this, I hope to do this, I hope to do that. I'm trying to do this. All these are things that you hope for. Yet, how many people say, man, I fear that everything I've done won't be accepted. I fear that my salah is not accepted. I fear that I gave this brother salams, but it was something in my chest. Maybe Allah might not accept that. How many acts of worship do we actually look at and think, is Allah going to accept that from me or not? If we thought like that, we all would move differently. See, as the ulama mentioned, al-Muslim ma bayna raja wa khawf. Right? A Muslim is between fear and hope. A Muslim is between fear and hope. When a person is living and they're healthy, there should be more fear than hope. And they say if a person got maratul maut, meaning they're on their deathbed, they have a terminal illness, it should be more hope than what? Than fear. Does that make sense? So the scholars of Islam, they taught us that when a person's living this life, there should be more fear than hope. The problem is when you distance yourself from knowledge and its people, then the majority of the masses receive from the people that's teaching more hope than fear. Pay attention. When an educator, myself, whoever is sitting in this seat, when we distance ourselves from knowledge, then the people receive from us more hope than fear. Because we're only giving out what we do. More hope than fear. But in reality, we should be spewing out, we should be having people believe that you, all of us, myself, you, everyone here, we should have more fear than hope. Because the fear is going to hold us, it's going to lock us in. But the hope is going to say, man, I'll make Tawbah later. I'll make Tawbah tomorrow. I'm good. I was out of pocket today. Man, inshallah, I'll make Tawbah later. Everything is inshallah. It's always a positive get back. Nobody's thinking about the punishment. Nobody's thinking about fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, if a person were to look at their sins, how many people look at their sins and say, dang, I'm really messed up? How many people think about their sins? Real right. How many people here really think about their sins? Not many. Why? Because we're always hoping. Man, Allah probably. You don't say it. We don't say it out loud. But inside, man, inshallah, Allah forgive me, I'm Jones. Inshallah, you know what I mean? I might be forgiven. All we think about is forgiveness, but we never think about that fear that we should have of Allah that will prevent us from doing it. And the last thing, I don't want to go on too long, but a lot of times, because we don't have fear, it's easy for us to backbite. It's easy for us to have namima, ghiba, etc. It's easy for us to take the rights of our brothers and sisters in Islam because we don't have fear. We're not fearful. Even though we oppress each other, we're still hopeful from Allah. Even though we oppress each other, we're still hopeful from Allah. The next thing we're going to talk about, inshallah ta'ala, is bid'ah. Imam Ahmad was a scholar of Sunnah. And one of the things that happens when a person is trying to get themselves right with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll find that people of innovation, usually, people from innovation, most of the innovations that they do is something that they did trying to get close to Allah. It's something that they did trying to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, we're going to mention a story, inshallah ta'ala, that happened, and this is the last thing we'll mention about Imam Ahmad during that time. Mind you, Imam Ahmad was a scholar of hadith. He was serious. He was a scholar of tawheed. He was a scholar of Ahlul Sunnah from the Imams of Ahlul Sunnah. Right? فقال Imam Ahmad, فقال للإمام أحمد. So one of Imam Ahmad's companions, he says, كان أحد أصحاب الإمام أحمد يختلف إلى حارث المحاسبي. They went to go, they told him about this guy named Harith al-Muhasibi. He was known to be a tremendous speaker. So much so that when he would speak, the people would cry, and we all know speakers like that. Certain people, they like listening and taking lectures from certain brothers. Oh man, mashallah, he's a good speaker. Or he moved me. Or he made me cry, etc., etc. In some cases, it's good. In some cases, it may be what? Bad. So in this case, Imam Ahmad, he said, إِنَّ حَادِثَ يَقُولُ كَذَا وَكَذَا وَكَذَا وَفِيهِ مِنَ الْخُشُوعِ وَالصَّلَاحِ وَالطَّاعَةِ. So they were telling Imam Ahmad about this guy named Harith. He said, this person, he has khushu', he has fear of Allah. He has salah, he's good, he presents well. And he has ta'ah, and he has outward obedience. فقال إذن سآتي وجعلني في مكان أسمع كلامه ولا يراني. So Imam Ahmad said, okay, I want to come hear from him. Everybody want a heart softener. Everybody. I don't know a human alive that don't want to hear something make their heart tremble. So Imam Ahmad said, bet, let me go. I want to go listen to him, but I want to sit in a place where nobody can see me. He was still Imam Ahmad. He didn't want everybody saying, so he wanted to sit somewhere so nobody saw him. فَأَتَى Imam Ahmad وَاخْتَفَى. So Imam Ahmad came and he stood back. وَلَمَّا صَلُّوا الْمَغْرِبَ وَجَلَسُوا فَقَدَّمَ لَهُمْ. So after they prayed Maghrib, they sat back and the people came close to him. طَعَامًا ثُمَّ صَلُّوا عِشَاء. So they all got together, ate food, and then they prayed Isha. وَجَلَسُوا يَعْنِي رَجَعُوا وَجَلَسُوا فِي الْبَيْتِ. So they all came back, they came back together, they sat down, they ate, and they sat in the house. ثُمَّ جَلَسُوا مُدَّةً لَمْ يَتَكَلَّمَ الْحَارِث. They sat for a while, and Harith, he didn't talk yet. So they're waiting. He says, وَفِيهَا وَإِنَّمَا كَانَ مُتَخَشِّعًا عَلَيْهِ آثَارَ خَوْفٍ. While he was sitting there and he looked fearful. His face, everything about him looked like, mashallah, this is a person that fears Allah. He had all the signs. You ever see somebody, you look at him like that, mashallah, man, you can see the obedience. So he said, فَسَأْلَهُ أَحْدَ أَصْحَابَهُ سُؤَالًا. So now one of the people asked Al-Harith a question. Once they asked him a question, فَتَكَلَّمَ بِكَلَامِ أَهْلُ السُّلُوكِ. They said when he started to speak, he was an excellent speaker. رَقَائِق. It was a heart softener. فَظَلَّ يَتَكَلَّمُ وَأَصْحَابَهُ مِنْهُمْ مَنْ تَخَشَّعَ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ بَكَى. He said he spoke so well that some of the people started, their hearts trembled. Some of the people started to cry. قَالَ هَذَا الرَّجُلُ صَاحِبَ الْإِمَامِ أَحْمَدِ فَصَعِدْتُ إِلَى أَحْمَدِ. So the man said, one of the companions of Imam Ahmad, he went to Imam Ahmad. لَا أَرَى فَإِذَا هُوَ يَبْكِي. So when he went to Imam Ahmad, he saw him crying. His speech was so good, even Imam Ahmad was crying. فَقُلْتُ. And he said, so I said, Ya Abu Abdullah. He said, oh Father Abdullah, oh Abu Abdullah, كَيْفَ الَّذِي سَمِعْتَ. He said, what do you think about what you heard? Huh? He went to Imam Ahmad. He said, what do you think about what you heard? قَالَ مَا سَمِعْتُ كَلَامًا أَحْسَنُ مِنْ هَذَا. Imam Ahmad said, I didn't hear any speech better than that. Man, that was the best speech I ever heard. مَا سَمِعْتُ كَلَامًا أَحْسَنُ مِنْ هَذَا وَلَكِنْ لَا تُصَاحِبْهُ. He says, however, don't sit with him. So the man said, Lima, why? لأن هذا الكلام الذي قالوه لم يكن عليه هدي أهل السنة فيما مضى. He said, this is because the way he did that talk, that wasn't the way of the people of the Sunnah. It wasn't the way of the people of the Sunnah. Now, it's people today probably, Imam Ahmad is being extra. Maybe he was jealous. Maybe he was this. Maybe he was that. La. When we say, now mind you, anytime someone speaks about Islam, does it have to be a certain way? That's the first question. If a person is teaching deen and giving you Islam, what Allah said, what His Messenger said, is there a certain way that's supposed to be done? Huh? What do y'all think? Can a person give da'wah or teach deen the way they want to? No. Is there a certain way in which it should be done? Huh? Yes. So Imam Ahmad said the way this man gave that talk, it was not the way of the people of the Sunnah. وَإِنَّمَا أَتَوْا بِكَلَامِ فِي السُّلُوكِ جَدِيدٍ وَتَخَشَّعُوا وَلَمْ يَعْرِفُهُ الْعُلَمَاءِ. The way he did it and caused the people's hearts to tremble, this wasn't the way of the people of knowledge. And it was a new way of giving da'wah that hasn't been known before. وَعَلَيْهِ هَذَا الْإِعْدَادِ أَنَّهُ كَانَ مَعْهُمْ زَاغٌ إِلَى بِدْعَةٍ. And when a person tends to speak that way, it can lead them to bid'ah. It can lead them to innovations. It says, وَلِهَذَا نَهَى الْإِمَامِ أَحْمَدْ عَنْ صُحْبَةِ الْحَارِثِ. So from that, Imam Ahmad warned the people not to sit with this person named Harith, and he warned them from his sittings. وَكَانَ مَوْضُعًا لِأَجْلِ مَا نُقِلَ لَهُ مِنْ كَلَامٍ آخَرٍ فِيهِ بَعْضَ غَلَطٍ. And then it reached Imam Ahmad later that some of the things he was saying was even incorrect. Now let's stop for a second. How many speakers, you wouldn't even know. There are tons of speakers, good speakers. I mean, they got millions of people listen to their lectures. Some people may teach the proper way and some people may not. Some people may not, right? Imam Ahmad said, قال لم أسمع بكلام أحسن من هذا يعني من كلام القصاصين. The people, the storytellers, they have the best stories. They have the best stories. But like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we're going to test you to see which one of you are best in action. From those tests, or when you seek knowledge of who you're studying with, make sure you stick to the path of the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. As you have this statement of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, where he said, "Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad." Whoever does an action, pay attention. Whoever does an action, whoever teaches Islam, whoever does anything in Islam the way in which was not legislated by the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, then it is returned upon him. In this hadith you can find in Sahih Muslim. So then another narration, "Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad." Once again, there are actions that people introduce in the religion that are not necessarily from the deen. Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah ta'ala, he felt it important to stress that to the people. And lastly, it's important for us, brothers and sisters in Islam, to remind ourselves of having taqwa and fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahu Jalla wa ala, He says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Dhariyat, إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the people that are muttaqeen. What's a muttaqeen? A person who fears Allah creates a space and a barrier between themselves and the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah says, إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي الْجَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونٍ, that they're going to be in paradise with gardens. آخِذِينَ مَا آتَاهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ مُحْسِنِينَ. That's because in the dunya, they were from the muhsineen, from the good doers. What made them from the muhsineen? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now gives a reason. كَانُوا قَلِيلًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ مَا يَهْجَعُونَ. That they would sleep only little in the night and stand and pray. وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. And right before Salatul Fajr, they will be up in the morning making istighfar. These are the things that we find, if you look through a lot of the narrations of the Salaf, you'll find that they were serious in their worship. That wasn't something that they played with. And I want to mention a personal story. One time before, I'm not going to mention the sheikh's name, but one time before I graduated from Qura, one of the mashayikh in Mecca, one of the judges, he said, let's travel to Medina. And in Medina, when we went to Medina, we read through a book called Al-Kafi. Al-Kafi from Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi. And we read through the volume dealing with zakat. And the purpose of it was to understand how to use qiyas from usul al-fiqh. So the whole time we were reading and trying to figure out, he was showing me techniques on how to use it in a book called Al-Kafi. Al-Muhim, while we're driving in Mecca, driving to Medina, we stayed in a hotel. So I was hyped because it was me, the sheikh, and there was a couple other judges. So we had a big suite, but I was in a room with the sheikh. So it's time to go to, we were reading all night. It was time to go to sleep. And I'm laying in the bed, but I got my eyes open. Because, we reading all these narrations about the scholars. And so I'm like, dang. I got one eye open looking at him. And he slid out the bed. He slid out the bed, so he didn't want me to see him, but I saw him slide out. So I'm like, dang. So my bed's his bed. He slid out the bed, and he got up and started praying. And I was like, dang. Number one, we're traveling. Remember how the sheikh said in the beginning? And a musafir. I was like, dad, we traveling. Sheikh. So now I wanted to get up, but I said, that's going to be corny. So the sheikh, may Allah preserve him, he got up and he stood up and prayed for a long time. But he don't know that I saw him. And then after he finished, he looked back. I tried to act like I was asleep, and he slid back in the bed. The moral of the story was, learning with this particular scholar in my last couple years at a university, I learned more. I can honestly say out of certain subjects, I learned more in about a year and a half in certain subjects than I learned my whole time there in 10 years, sitting with him. He would allow me to go to the courtroom while he ruled over cases, showed me how he ruled over cases, why, look at the statements of the scholars of the past. I benefited tremendously, but the thing about it, the thing that I benefited the most was watching their worship. Because their worship wasn't like ours. Their worship was not like ours. One of the things, when you read about the scholars of the past, like one of the things we learned from the ulama, always read the life of the Salaf. Read about the scholars of the past, how they used to live, how they used to recite Quran, how the people they used to keep in their circles.